Hi everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the housing. We're going to be spending the workshop on an introduction of NYCDB, which is exploring New York City open data with the Housing Data Coalition. Us for our current members of the Housing Data Coalition. So we're going to spend a bit of time just like introducing ourselves. You can start off. Ree.
Hi everyone, I'm Ree. I joined Housing Data Coalition like about a year ago. I work as a data analyst for the MTA, but I'm not here affiliated with them, just member of the Housing Data Coalition today.
My name's Maxwell. I work at a nonprofit that also does kind of housing data stuff called JustFix, but I've been a member of the Housing Data Coalition, which is like a volunteer group since it started back in like 2017. We've been doing a lot of different projects and attending a bunch of these over the years, and
my name is Steve. I'm a software engineer. Member of HDC, Housing Data Coalition, for a few years now, helping out with different stuff.
And I'm Itzamna. I am a research and data associate. I work with ANHD, which is shorthand for the Association of Housing Housing Association of Neighborhood and Housing Development. I've been with them for about a year and a half, and since that time have also been a HDC member. Here we have our GitHub repository. So some of the data sets that you'll notice are found in New York City open data, but there are data sets there that are also done from us. We just basically cohesively and consolidate all the data sets into one place. The GitHub repository, if anybody is interested in taking a look at, is github.com/NYCDB/NYCDB. So you can feel free to, join in and just like see it yourself. Sweet. So why use NYCDB? Making NYC's open data usable. So the housing data in New York City exists in multiple formats, and it can be CSV, Excel sheets, or PDFs. In order to analyze it effectively, we extract the data from different sources, as I had mentioned before. So not all the data sets are specifically coming from New York City open data, but we are using different sources as well. We transform data sets into a structured format, which I'll go over in the next slide with you guys. And we load it into a database for easier analysis for a lot of housing advocacy organizations and researchers. NYCDB simplifies this process by making the data just more accessible. And so we do expand access to hard to reach data. For example, accessing data is straightforward when it's available on NYC's open data portal. However, when data sets aren't readily available, we often do need to go an extra mile, like scraping data off of a PDF, if any of you guys are familiar with just like web scraping. So it's just pretty much a machine learning technique in order to extract all the words from a PDF. And so, for example, this is like part of a PDF. What we actually need is like the apartment numbers of the unit. And so this is something that we end up extracting manually. So it can be a little bit time consuming, but it's also included in NYC Open in Housing Data Coalition database. Now, another thing that we do is add BBLs for better cross-referencing. So with housing data, BBLs becomes easier to cross-reference or join two data sets with each other just for further analysis. So we try to make that easier for everybody. For example, for DOB job application filings, although they do have separate columns that have borough, block, and lot, we just basically concatenate it into one column, so that way it's easier just to join it with another data set later on. And another thing that we do is we append latitude and longitude coordinates to data sets, so that way it's easier to also go further and do spatial analysis if you'd like. One great thing is if anybody eventually is interested in joining the Housing Data Coalition, in our Slack channel, we regularly update our updates to a channel called NYCDB Loader. So it just lets everybody know that like every data set is being updated as it go on a daily basis.
Okay, I can take over now. So we're gonna do some actual live coding examples. I'm gonna do it on the screen, but feel free if you have a laptop to open it up and go along with me. We're gonna be using a SQL platform. What would you call it?
Yeah, it's the way to access the database just directly through the web browser. So you don't need to download any special programs or
Yeah.
anything like that. Everybody can kind of follow along
Yeah.
as we go.
Oh, and worth mentioning, if later on you want to play with NYCDB, you can download it and run it locally. So you don't need to access this, but we did make it accessible for this weekend for this talk. So if you have a laptop and you want to follow along, this is the web address to go to. So
I'm gonna get started, and it's okay if you aren't ready or can't.
you can always do this later. We're going to do some breakout sessions after this where we're going to do some queries and come around and help you. So there will still be a chance. So I kind of wanted to show you what it's like to work with NYCDB as a Housing Data Coalition member. So first of all, this is where the code for it's hosted. It's on GitHub, so you can search for it pretty easily. It's open source. This page would probably be the place you start when you're trying to explore the data sets we have. We have all these links here that take you directly to the data sets that are available. So you can see how many we have. And these were all created through, as you heard earlier, from importing them from NYC's open data and doing web scraping. So the one I wanted to do some demonstration with is our evictions data set. So you might want to do a project or work with some local groups to explore what's going on with evictions in NYC. So when you go to the this page, you'll see information about where this data set came from. So you can go back to the original source, which if you go here, it'll take you to NYC Open Data, so you can see exactly where we're getting this information from. We have a data dictionary that breaks down all the columns that are going to be in the data set and what that information shows. And then we have the name of the table in the database. So this is what we're going to use right now. And a lot of the other data sets also have example queries. This is a new page, so we haven't set that up yet. But let's just do some queries. So the who here is comfortable writing SQL? Who here is uncomfortable writing SQL? Who has never written SQL? Okay, so we'll start very basic. So the most basic, what's that? Oh, sorry. So, yep. So first thing you want to do is connect to NYCDB, and then in here, go to public. So the most simple query we would probably want to do is just explore a data set. So we'll just do select star from executed evictions. And then run that. And you can just explore the data. This is just going to give you all the data. So select is pretty clear, from is pretty clear. The star means we're going to look at all the data, all the columns in this data set. If you want to just see how many points of data there are, you can do a count. And you can see that there's 106,000 evictions in this data set, which I think only goes back to 2017. What's next? So if you only want to get one or a small bit of the data, if you don't want to see all of these rows, you can instead give specific column names. So you can just get the boroughs for every row. If you want to, okay, another good thing would be to see eviction counts using, so like right now, this is all the evictions going back, I think, 7 years. So you probably want to limit it because it's probably more useful to see it for a specific amount of time. So you could look through here, you could find a useful data point for dates. So I think executed date is probably the most useful. So we would want to do executed date is greater than, let's do all evictions in 2024. So we'll do between the end of 2023 and, oops, executed dates is less than 2025, 01, and hopefully this runs. Sweet. So that is all the evictions just from 2024 in a single year in New York City. And of course, you can get rid of the count if you want to actually look through it. Next thing I wanted to show you was another very useful thing you can do in here is we probably want to see more granular data about this based on maybe location. So this is how you would find the count, not just for the whole borough, but for the whole city, but borough by borough, what is the count? So you would add a group by and the column you care about, and you would add it to the select. You would add it before the count, and let's see if this works. So that would be how you get a breakdown based on borough. And that's pretty easy to look through, but if you were doing this on a larger amount of data and you wanted to get which borough had the largest number, you might be doing this on zip codes or council districts. So you would add in an order by count, and we'd probably put it descending. So now it just sorts it. So we can see here that the Bronx in 2024 had the most evictions citywide. So that's useful information, and you can do a lot of stuff with that. Let's say we want to see which specific buildings had the most evictions. So you saw earlier BBL mentioned. So if you're familiar with housing data, you know what that is. If you're not familiar, you saw it on a previous slide. It is an identifier for every single lot in the city. It's borough, block, and lot number. It's 10 digits, unique identifier. So this is giving us all the BBLs ranked in order in the entire city for evictions. See the first one? The first one has a really high count and no BBL. That is because there's probably a lot of data rows in this data set that just are missing a BBL that are null. And so they're putting them all together into that. There are some things we can do to maybe reduce that number, but that's just a problem with the NYC open data that we're getting from this data set. So the largest one that we can see here, though, is 52 evictions from this BBL. So that is going to see if you want to now, let's look at what evictions actually happened at this BBL. So let's go back to getting all the rows for 2024, and let's add another where clause. So we're doing where in this date range, and let's add to it just that BBL, and BBL equals So now you can look through all the evictions that occurred at this block and lot location in the year 2024. You can see a lot of information. You can see the marshals that executed the evictions. You can see, get out of here. Latitude, longitude, community board, council district, some notes, a lot of information. So you can imagine doing a lot of exploration with that. So one more thing that I wanted to show you is the fact that one of the benefits of what NYCDB does is adding these BBLs and making sure that all these tables can be linked together. So this could just be the start of your exploring the data. But once you have maybe some BBLs that you want to look more deeply into, you can explore other data sets that we have. So you can go back here, you can look around. I'm going to look at the HPD violations. HPD is the Housing Department, Housing Prevention, Preservation, and Development. So you can find out all about that on this page as usual. So let's just do the most basic query again, HPD violations. And oh yeah, I forgot from. I'll just put that. So these are all, this is the entire table. Let's look at how big this table is. So that's pretty big, almost 10 million violations in this data set. And what I wanted to show you was that we can explore this now by adding that where clause that we used earlier, where BBL equals, and we can use that BBL that we found from earlier, which was the borough block and lot with the most evictions citywide. So there were 52 evictions from this place in 2024. Let's see if they have any HPD violations. And unsurprising, they have a lot, more than 200. And we can do a count. We can see how many violations this specific BBL has, almost 2,000. But that is going back many years. So let's see how many they had in 2024, the year that we saw the evictions.
You want inspection data.
Oh yeah, I'm using the wrong, there's no executed date in this table set. In this table set, it is inspection date, I believe. And you can find that on the GitHub wiki or just exploring the data set. So let's see if this works. So in 2024, they had 52 evictions, but also had 166 open violations. Another thing that would be useful to just look here is how many of these violations are still open. So let's look at open and close. Let's see if this landlord that is evicting the most people in the city is resolving these violations that the city is discovering. So we're going to do for the entire history of this building, how many HPD violations are still currently open. And it currently today has 839 open HPD violations, while they are also evicting the most people in the city. The very last thing I will show you quickly, because I'm running a little bit late, is one more table that I think you'll find useful. It is Pluto. And this, the Pluto system has basically geographical and location data about different buildings. So another thing you might want to do, and you might want to do all these queries and do this exploration and then join up all this data. So maybe you want to put this onto a map or something like that. And so the Pluto data set might be one that you want to pull in to this Pluto latest. And we're going to look up this BBL again. So we're just going to check this eviction location, and so you can see it's in Queens. You got the community district, school district, council district, police precinct,
whole bunch of other things. I believe there's, one very useful data point you'll probably use from here is the number of residential units. So that can be really informative. So this block and lot has almost 6,000 units. I actually looked it up earlier on Google Maps. It's like a complex of buildings, which explains why there's so many. It's a complex of apartment buildings. It's got the size of the lot, a lot of information. So this would kind of be an example of how you might explore the data in NYCDB. And as you get more advanced with SQL, you can write more complicated queries where you join this information. So you get one table with number of evictions, number of open violations, latitude, longitude. You could put it into a map. A lot of interesting things. I think that's it, right? So let me go back to the slideshow now, and I'll pass it off to Ree.
Great, so now we're gonna go through an exercise, fun little exercise that gives you all practice and experience working with the database. So we're just gonna ask you to try to find a couple pieces of information from the database. So we're gonna look at these waterfront zip codes. We're gonna ask you to identify, so just pick one and identify the building that has the most number of violations in whatever zip code you choose. And then we're also, there's a chance to also take a look at some tools that JustFix and some other organizations have built on top of New York City database. So you're going to use JustFix's Who Owns What map or tool, and you're going to look up the building that you identify and figure out who's the landlord. And then you're going to use the DAP portal, another map, and you're going to figure out some information about when this building was last sold, and you can also look at other financial information. So we're going to keep this up, and we're going to give you like 20 minutes to work through this. Feel free to talk to your neighbors if you find anything interesting and get stuck, and we'll also circle around if you need help. And just a reminder, for figuring out which data sets you might want to work with, or some other help with SQL, you can go to the GitHub page. All of the information about all the data sets and all the columns is on there. So yeah, go ahead and get started.
And on the handout, which there's also a PDF copy in the Google Drive, which is linked here as well with a bit.ly link that we shared before. You can find links to be able to just click right out to these different websites, so you can kind of find everything that you need there. And also feel free to ask any questions.
And break up into groups, work together, collaborate, and we'll be coming around helping.
Hopefully you all learned a little bit from that exercise. We have a few minutes for some questions. Did anybody have some questions about the exercise? Anything that they learned? Also feel free, all of these will be linked and on our slides. I think we can share too, so feel free to go through the exercise. I think that exercise is linked on our GitHub too. So feel free to do this at home. Yeah.
I'm just curious if you can do, is this sort of like finding out the data, like how do you figure out who are the worst actors based on this kind of a data? Because it seems like you're finding out, by zip code, who's got the most violations and which buildings, but how could you, and I don't want to walk through it, but how would you find out if you were researching a specific portfolio, what would be the steps? Would you use this platform to do it?
Yeah, so So what we've been talking about today is the NYCDB is kind of the database. So this is all the groups kind of from Housing Data Coalition. Oftentimes what we're trying to do is answer a question like that, and sometimes the best way to do that is with like a website that is able to kind of like pull all of this information and make it kind of searchable. And what we do is you need a kind of like data foundation for all of that, and everyone might be wanting to make their own tools like that. So we wanted to all kind of collaborate on putting the database together so that everybody can kind of do more with it. One of the things that comes out of this database from actually the org that I work at called JustFix, we made a website called Who Owns What? And that we kind of it's built completely off of this NYCDB database. And so we take all the information about the buildings, including the registration information that they provide to the housing department, where they have to list like the company, or if it's an LLC, the head officer of that company, and they give like a business address. And we do kind of linking, writing SQL queries a little more complicated than what we showed today, but able to kind of like link out across all of them and find the owners and like all of the common buildings. So you can look up an individual address like this, and we've kind of linked it to all the other buildings that appear to be owned by the same company or person. And so this would be more of the way that you can kind of start and then research more into each one of these buildings and learn more about them. But sometimes you don't, it might be a situation where like you don't already have a name that you're looking for, and you want to just find like what are the buildings you should know about that like conditions are really bad in. But so that can be a place where it's really nice to start with the data and kind of explore it that way, find a building like in the example we went through, and then you can kind of use some of these tools and others and go out and knock on some doors and do that kind of work if you're like a tenant organizer or something like that. And that's a lot of like what our group does to kind of like help with that sort of work.
Okay. And then just one quick question, is there any link, is there any data in here from the finance department in terms of property tax, like the fast increase in property taxes, which would reflect it would reflect a very fast increase in the value of a property, which often means that a lot of tenants have been pushed out or evicted. So when property values increase very quickly, it can mean that something out of the ordinary has happened in a specific building or specific portfolio. So are there
Yep.
queries that also involve property tax?
Yeah, there's data sets that have all of that, again, at this kind of building level with the borough block and lot used to kind of identify them. And actually, Itzamna's org at ANHD, they have another portal where you can kind of look up buildings, and they have a lot more information like on building sales,
Yeah.
foreclosures,
Yeah.
all of
Just
these
like
sorts of
an alert
things.
project.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
amazing.
So all kind of using the same sort of data. But again, you can kind of start with the data and kind of find buildings in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll maybe close with just like a quick mention of the Housing Data Coalition. So as we mentioned, we're a kind of group of volunteers, so a lot of just like individual members as well as folks from like different nonprofit orgs like my own. And yeah, we kind of like got together because a lot of us are working on similar projects trying to help out, whether it's like tenant organizations. We do a lot of work with like the Right to Counsel Coalition in the city. We have a monthly meeting every third Wednesday on Zoom now, where we kind of like share projects with each other, have presentations either from our members or like sometimes external folks are like coming to present on a different topic. It really kind of ranges from like really kind of like technically oriented folks that are maybe coming from like a software engineering background or something, and they want to help out on like a meaningful project like this, or somebody who like knows a lot about housing, maybe is an organizer, maybe like working kind of in policy advocacy or something like that. And it's kind of like a really great group of minds to kind of come together and work on different projects. One of the kind of biggest ones is this NYCDB project, since it kind of serves as a really great foundation for other tools. But we do also a lot of like smaller kind of like one-off analysis projects, where we get kind of requests from community members to help answer questions. So that might be something like they're looking into their building and want to find more information, or like a tenant union is trying to find like a list of buildings that they might want to reach out to, and we can kind of work with them to kind of understand their question and the needs and what you can answer with the data. So they're kind of like new projects all the time and easy to kind of get involved through the meetings. We have a Slack where we kind of coordinate throughout the months, and yeah, it's open to anybody who wants to join. We have a link which is also on the handouts to join. There's just like a short form, get you added to the email list.
And I think, sorry if you mentioned it, but if you don't want to join, but you have a data problem that you want to explore, shoot us an email, describe the problem. It gets shared around, and maybe somebody can help you out with it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a link to our website on the handout as well, and there's a place on there where you can find our email, or also there's like a little form where you can just kind of send in questions, and they'll go straight to us. So.
There we go.
Yeah. And yeah, if you want to join, we have our next meeting coming up. I believe it's on April 16th. Yeah. I think we're kind of running out of time.
Minutes left, so.
Yeah, so if there's any other questions that anybody has, either about like some of the technical stuff with SQL and what we've been doing, the data sets, or any of the other projects that we've worked on, things like that.
A question about NYCHA. How is their data? What's the deal with their data?
Yeah, unfortunately they do not have as much open data out there, so it's a lot more limited. There's some information about the buildings and locations. A lot of it they like put out in PDFs. That's another kind of case where we have a data set of all of the borough block and lot for every NYCHA building in the city, but it has to be like scraped out of a PDF that they release every year. So that one you're a lot more limited on. There's actually like a law that says they're supposed to report all of their HPD violations as well, but that's kind of been held up, and HPD's not reporting them, and there's like a problem there, a lawsuit going on, but there's a lot less about NYCHA that you can get at that kind of building level, unfortunately. It's all kind of internal systems that aren't shared. Yeah.
I'm curious to hear about participation in the Housing Data Coalition. So I'm hearing, some of y'all sound like you're participating in your professional capacity in relation to the day-to-day work that you do. Some are participating in a sort of personal capacity. Curious to hear, like, what's that like among folks? Like, is it mostly people who do it in a professional capacity? How do folks sort of balance? I guess I'll disclose my sort of thought process here is I'm in a role that would not necessarily like directly link, but it's like close enough, and I'd like to see how I can crosswalk stuff between. And I'm curious to hear about your experiences doing that with your respective day-to-day work versus the Housing Data Coalition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's mostly like individual kind of member volunteers. That's like how I got started in it as well back in like 2017 when we started. But there's a handful of orgs that kind of work in very much this space and can kind of like help a little bit with some of the like resources and stuff. Like my org like hosts the database, and we do a little bit of work contributing to it and stuff. But the actual kind of like operation is mostly the folks that are just kind of there as individuals. It's but basically how it would work is people kind of like join the meetings and we kind of talk about projects. People can like bring project ideas and look for collaborators to join, and are able to kind of bring together groups that are kind of from different areas. Have like a few people that kind of actually work in the city, but they are here just kind of in an individual capacity, want to kind of use some of their skills to help out on projects like this.
Is there anywhere that there's like a central place where like transformation SQL queries are kept? Like, this query on top of the complaints stats that will give you the top like complaints per building in this place. Is there anywhere that is stored?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a little bit of that. We have kind of like another GitHub project where we try to put any kind of code that comes out of data requests that we get and try to work on with people so that can be kind of shared as an example. But probably the best source would be on the GitHub page that we were looking through that has the kind of page for every data set, the wiki on there. So with all the information about the data set, we have a section at the bottom of like useful queries. And so the kind of goal is that as all the different members might be working on different projects, they can kind of add their useful SQL query examples there, and then we can kind of build a library essentially of examples in that way. It's also been one of the things that we do as a group is like almost every year for the last few years now, we've been having a kind of in-person hackathon kind of thing where everybody kind of gets together. And we'll have some people that are actually kind of like working on the Python code that is the NYCDB tool itself. Some people that are kind of like working on analysis projects and queries, creating some of those examples. Other folks might be just like helping to build out the documentation of each data set and write up more kind of like explanations of things. And so that's one of the ways that kind of gets built out. I think we're coming up on time now, so we should probably let everybody go and get up to lunch, but I think we can stick around a little bit if anybody has questions, want to kind of like follow up after. But again, if you want to kind of get involved, Oh yeah, there's another talk from my org. If anybody's still like interested in more housing stuff, we've got another one, which is another tool that kind of it builds on NYCDB, and it creates a website for you to be able to kind of figure out whether you are eligible for good cause eviction protection law. So this is a law that was passed last year, which grants a lot of new protections to tenants that previously didn't have any. So it limits rent increases. It also limits the reasons that you can be evicted. But they made the laws for the eligibility extremely complicated and hard to answer, such that like without all of this data, you kind of would have no idea. Particularly because you need to know if your landlord owns more than 10 buildings, or sorry, 10 units, which might be spread across multiple buildings. And so you start to have to kind of answer some of the questions we were talking about of kind of linking these. So we use NYCDB to kind of help fill in a lot of those answers and guide you in how to answer that. So if you're interested, that's going to be later on today. But yeah, that's it. Thanks, everyone.